Hello, Minot sports fans, and welcome to another episode of the Minot Sports Podcast, part of the KMSU TV and Radio series. I am your host for each and every episode, Cole Clementich. I'm proud to bring you guys another episode of vast Minot sports content and news that will make you sure of not to miss it. I'd like to welcome you guys into episode number 22 in the second season of the Minot Sports Podcast installment. Like I was saying earlier, the Minot Sports Podcast is presented by KMSU TV and Radio. You can follow the podcast on social media at Minot Sports Podcast on Instagram, at Minot Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube at the Minot Sports Podcast. Big thanks always to our sponsors of the show, Joshua Strong and Peyton Bartsch Photography, and also for KMSU TV and Radio for allowing us to get behind the mic using their studios, their wonderfully decorated offices and rooms, top-notch. And you might be asking, what is KMSU TV and Radio? It is the brand name of the Minot State Broadcasting Department, home to the many young and aspiring majors in broadcasting here at Minot State University. When touring KMSU, you will see many potential opportunities to be involved. KMSU has live TV, where students can choose to be on-air talent for the weekly campus TV show called MSU Inside Out. Let me just tell you straight up, guys, that when you try out for the campus TV show, it is a lot of fun. And, of course, you have to be a major in broadcasting or taking the class, the COM 475 broadcast production, being covered by Neil Roberts and Lee Johnson, which we thank them, just a side note, for their support and help throughout our journey here on the podcast. But run by Neil Roberts and Lee Johnson, COM 475. If you're a broadcasting major and you want to get on live TV, this is the perfect opportunity. I'll tell you firsthand that I had a great experience being a co-host, made some connections, made some already made connections, and built upon them for a deeper relationship. Growth with each other is just a lot of fun. So if you're interested in that, we have live TV. We also have Kmsu Radio, which is a live radio feed for students to become live radio DJs. Just sign up for a shift and you're set, all dictated by your schedule. So say if you have class going on from 2 to 3 or even 2 classes in a row from 4 to 6, if you have that hour-long slot open between classes, and if the board is not occupied in that slot, you can most certainly write your name down if you're taking the class, or a broadcasting major if that applies to you. You can definitely sign up, first come, first serve, come in and get some live radio hours, and it's a lot of great hands-on experience. All that and much more through Minot State Broadcasting. We hope to see you along the way. Like I said, we are now on to episode 22. Today, we are going to talk about some big news, some that maybe was unexpected, you could say, at the very least. Some results are making a turn for the better. Some are making a turn for in the wrong direction. We got some wrestling, National Signing Day, women's basketball at MSU, Minotauros hockey, and tournament preview of District 12 girls basketball, which we will get started on right away, right now, here on the show, over at the Minot Auditorium. That is going to be the sight and sounds of Class B girls basketball action for the District 12 division. Obviously, here in town, the Class B private schools of Bishop Bryan and R.E. Deemers, they apply in that division, and so they were good enough during this regular season to secure a spot, both of them, in this tournament. And the bracket was just released not too long ago by many local media outlets all over on social media. I can try and actually retweet that again, or if you guys want to go see, just hit up K-Heart Radio's Twitter page, or Ben Barr should have it as well. But taking a look right here at the District 12 girls basketball tournament bracket, of course, it's been the same for all years. It'll be going on at the Minot Municipal Auditorium. Kicking off will be Glenburn and Berthold. Glenburn is the 1 seed, Berthold the 8 seed. So we pretty much already know how the seeding is going to go for these matchups. Obviously, next one down is 4 versus 5 seeds. Surrey is number 4. And then we have the Our Redeemers Lady Knights at number 5. We'll get to them in a moment here, but continuing on down the bracket, Mulhall, Lansford, Sherwood at number 2. 7 is South Prairie. The Bishop Ryan Lady Lions are number 3. And the Delax Burlington Lakers are number 6. So Glenburn versus Berthold, Surrey versus Our Redeemers, MLS versus South Prairie, and to cap off night 1, Bishop Ryan versus Delax Burlington. So both the Minot sports teams of the Class B private schools, Our Redeemers and Bishop Ryan, in this District 12 tournament. Our Redeemers, the number 5 seed, despite such a fast start to the season, kind of a little bit of a slip up, losing some games from time to time, but they're still pretty darn good. However, do we approach to them with caution entering this tournament, despite the fast start, but losing some games as of late? I wouldn't overreact. However, some of those games, you just might have to give them a pass because some of those were District 12 versus District 11 matchups. But when the time comes for when they reach the region tournament, if they do manage to win 2 in the districts to make it to the regionals, it only gets tougher from there. So, and what you saw from those past matchups, you're going to get more of the same in the regional tournament if you do end up making it. I would say not to overreact until we actually get to that point in the tournament. But another big reason why they are a 5 seed, despite that they are 13-5 overall, that is the overall record for them when combining District 12, Region 6, and non-conference games. The reason they are the 5 seed is because they actually finished 5th place in, or I shouldn't say 5th place, but finished 5th inside District 12 matchups, going 4-3, which is technically it's tied for 4th with Surrey, but Surrey owns the tiebreaker because Surrey won over Our Redeemers when they played in Surrey not too long ago. So they have a good record overall, but inside District 12 play, however, that is a big factor. So they base this seeding off of what their record is inside their division, or inside the district, I should say. They also base it off of what their record is inside Region 6 play. So some other matchups against teams that are in the same region, but just in a different district. Our Redeemers went 8-3 in Region 6, but if they do end up making it to the regional tournament, the seeding will probably be quite different. Reseeded, I don't know the exact, I guess I should say, reseeding procedure. I would think that the results from the District 12 tournament and District 11 tournament would have a say in it, but if our Redeemers or Bishop Ryan do make it, it is going to be probably a reseeding of sorts. But that is how our Redeemers got to the 5 seed, was based on how well they did inside the District 12. 4-3, it's not terrible, but given that MLS is 6-1, Glenburn is 5-2, and then you got Surrey right next to you at 4-3. This is something for our Redeemers to look at and say, we've done well outside of our division. We can definitely compete with these guys. Now, District 12 has quickly turned into a competitive one. And so that is pretty much how our Redeemers got there. Other teams were good in the process. Our Redeemers couldn't finish off or collect some few more wins inside the division, but I mean 4-3, they made it. They got as much as they could, and you could very well say the first matchup is definitely up for grabs, given that it is a 4 versus 5 seeded game. So for our Redeemers, despite the recent slumps, do you approach them with caution inside this tournament? I still think they're a very good ball club, and anything can happen, especially when it's time for the postseason, when it's time for teams to get up and get moving because nothing's given to you. It definitely has an impact maybe on their confidence, especially losing on senior night. But you want to start off hot. I mean, certainly in regular season play, you want to get in a groove, like have that feel-good emotions around the team and maybe have that little bit of a win streak for the team rolling into the tournament so that they can feel good for themselves. But that isn't the case, so for the Knights, definitely start off hot, and if you win this one, which is, like I said, it's up for grabs. It is against Surrey, the team that has beaten them before, but again, nothing's given to anyone at this rate. And as for Bishop Ryan, they've kind of came on into their own, doing well in the District 12 division inside their divisional opponents, collecting 5 wins and 2 losses, which a great finish, a solid finish for this team, despite that they went only 11-6 overall. The key thing here is that, once again, just like our Redeemers, they were based off of their record inside the District 12 matchups during the regular season, and they did well enough. They're actually technically tied for second with Glenburn, who is also at 5-2, but because of tiebreaker, they get the 3rd seed, which a pretty steady finish for the Bishop Ryan Lady Lions girls basketball team. They have proved to us that they can keep up with the competition that surrounds District 12 just a little bit better than what our Redeemers did when it's 5-2 versus 4-3. Yeah, it's a 1-game difference or a couple game difference, whatever the amount of games back it is. Bishop Ryan was just able to collect 1 more win as compared to our Redeemers and have 1 less loss on the score sheet, except now, unlike our Redeemers, they're in a spot where nothing's given to them. They're in the 3 seed versus the 6 seed game. They actually play the final game of that night, of that opening night of the District 12 tournament. They're in a position where they can't get too overly comfortable. Like Delax, Burlington, yeah, they finished below our Redeemers, but again, this is a postseason tournament where you have to be on top of your game, get ready, utilize those good days of practice, because what we learned from the regular season about this division is that it's a competitive one. Just going from the 1st seed, heck, even all the way down to our Redeemers at the 5 seed, 6-1 versus 4-3 inside the division, that's pretty close. So it's gonna be a major turnout here, and for Bishop Ryan, have to be ready, have to be on top of your game. Our Redeemers, you're in a situation where it is up for grabs, and it's all about how you grasp onto the opportunity at hand. And so with that said, Minot sports fans, District 12 girls basketball tournament in Class B going on at the Minot Auditorium Thursday through Saturday, games all day. And it's been said that the real season begins and it'll be a lot of fun. So looking forward to that. Before we get on to our next topic to talk about, I just want to tell you guys about Joshua Strong, and safe to say he's good with the camera. He's very good, very talented, knows how to utilize his environment, knows which shots are his best ones, and he's got some great work going on over on his social media pages. If you want to go support him, he is on Twitter and Instagram at _Joshua W. Strong. He also has a Facebook page. I'm not sure of the Facebook handle, but he also has a website, www.joshuawstrong.com. I will need to ask him about his Facebook handle, but as always, we thank him for the sponsorship on the Minot Sports Podcast, being able to provide for us some nice, clean action shots of athletes who we can tag on social media to bring attention not only to our page, but also to Josh's page as well, or whatever social media page it might be. There's a whole bunch out there. But continuing on, the Minot Minotauros, they've been on Lady Luck's side as of late, where they haven't had to travel much with all of the ramifications surrounding COVID and the North American Hockey League. So many teams are just cap-strapped and not able to do much of anything as far as games go, even fan attendance. Heck, even the Toros have been strapped themselves. So you can say we're lucky, but not without some repercussions to it. But the Toros, you can say they were lucky as they have been on and on at home playing at the Mesa Arena Pepsi rink, because we are very fortunate here in the state of North Dakota to have some guidelines, but not as intense as in other states or other cities, heck, even in provinces up in Canada, or I should say Canada in general. Just, it's really, really intense up there as far as the border goes. But now there have been games played a lot in other states, but as for the Minot Minotauros, all their games, or I should say a majority of their games, have been at home against teams that haven't been able to play much on their home ice surface. And to see that a lot in the division, does it benefit the Toros, or is it a disservice for the team that now all of a sudden there may come a time where they have to go on the road a bunch and have to drive all those long drives and be in the team bus all those hours? How's that going to work for the Toros? However, we're still kind of on that trend of Toros are just going to get home games upon home games upon home games, that every so once in a while they'll have to go on the road. But what does this situation make for the Minotauros? It's interesting, and we may not know some answers for quite a bit. What we do know is that the Toros, and we are very thankful, obviously, here as the hometown fans, to be watching this team play on Friday and Saturday nights when we have time off to make the trip down to the Pepsi rink and catch a fun game of hockey. But time will tell with this COVID outbreak in the league of when restrictions will start to loosen up here for teams all around. Maybe the Toros do eventually get a long stretch of road games. It may not benefit them, but that just might have to be the situation we have to endure here. But for now, they're still playing more home games, and it seems like schedules are just being made up on the fly, and the Toros will be back home once again to take on the Minnesota Wilderness. And speaking of, you could say that the Toros are starting to catch some of their stride at this time, and at a good time where they're still playing home games. There seems to be a chemistry that is being built all around the team. A big factor of that is Coach Wagner keeping the same lines, not only in the top six, but also some of the bottom six players have solidified roles to their games with the Toros. Isaac Keller, guys like him, and Max Bogdanovich, and of course a few others have played a role to this team's success. And with the recent changes that Coach Wagner made with this team over the Christmas break, you give them a few games and they're starting to formulate some connections and a chemistry that this team has been missing for a few games. Specifically, even the top lines. We saw over the weekend the team scoring on the rush, a lot of cross-ice passes and nice finishes. They're spending way more time in the offensive zone as compared to time in the defensive end, where they've been having less time in there, which is a good sign. And obviously, hockey is just like every sport where it's not always going to be the case where you're going to have shifts where the other team scores or the other team has 2 minutes straight of offensive zone pressure. Those are going to happen every so once in a while. But it seems like with the Toros, maybe pre-Christmas break and post-Christmas break immediately, it seemed like there was just way too much zone time for the opposing teams, and the Toros had a hard time getting the puck out of the zone. Well, we're kind of starting to see some slight changes to that. They're starting to look more offensively structured, and defensively structured too. Obviously, there are going to be nights where they give up quite a few more shots than what they hope for, but there's one night where they held the Kenai River Brown Bears to, I can't remember what it was, like sub 25 on net on Keenan Rancier. One noticeable difference this time around than a couple weeks ago, and I've heard the players say this before, and I agree with them. The competitiveness is there. They're winning a few more board battles. Very noticeably, they're also getting sticks on pucks and sticks on sticks. They're disrupting, passing, shots, anything to stop Kenai River from getting a high chance shot or opportunity, and they did that very well this past weekend, I noticed. The only times, well, I shouldn't say the only times, but there was one case where a goal they gave up shorthanded. It was a pinch in the offensive zone, and of course everything went wrong on that play, and it's a 2-on-1 going the other way, and Kenai River capitalizes on it. Tough to stop, and then just a rocket of a wrist shot going past the glove of Rancier. This was on Saturday, and that was pretty much a tough one to stop. And then you go to Friday, it was actually the same score. So the Toros actually swept the Brown Bears 4-2 on both nights, which props to that. Very impressive, not only resulting in the same score, but just giving Kenai River nothing the rest of the way through. What was interesting is that Kenai actually took the 2-0 lead on both nights. They were actually carbon copy games where Kenai River started hot, and that was all Minot gave them. The rest of the way through, they shut them down, and they then said, it's our turn to get on the score sheet, and that is exactly what they did. And just by observing the goals that they scored over the weekend, you could notice that they're starting to connect well with each other and feel a chemistry starting to build. And that's only going to help the Toros the rest of the way through here, because when they had their goal scorers like Kyle Kukkonen and Joseph Hargindigi on the roster, it seemed like chemistry wasn't as active as maybe is what you have seen or thought. Now that they're gone, but we have these new players in the mix, they may have just needed a few games, to kind of get going, to start, get comfortable, and now that's resulting in more goals. I'm specifically referencing the top six because there's now a great mix of size, speed, and skill, and they're all meshing well together. And like I said, probably just needed a few games, and that was during that time where goals were hard to come by for this team, and that seems to be turning around in the right direction. So once again, Minotauros, they play once again at home, another to the long list of home games played already, but this weekend hosting the Minnesota Wilderness. Think there's coming a time, in fact, we probably already reached it by now, that I believe Kenai River was the designated home team, despite it was on Minot's ice. That may happen again, and also that the Toros were wearing their road jerseys. So that may happen again, and we'll see. We'll see what gives in that department. And now we take a look at some Minot State collegiate athletics, most notably with the women's basketball team. News surfaced around the team, and if you didn't know, or if you didn't catch it, if you missed it, head coach Mark Graupe no longer with the team. He was dismissed after the team went through, you could say, another poor start to the season. Obviously they got those 2 wins in there. I keep forgetting who it was. Crookston, probably. I think it was Crookston. Yeah, pretty sure it was Crookston. But some big news. After the team started 2-6, athletic department said that Mark Graupe is no longer the coach. The quote released by athletic director Andy Carter in the article, I quote, "It became evident to me that our women's basketball was not expecting the progress we all had expected," close quote. And then he goes on to say, we appreciate Mark's hard work on behalf of the women's basketball team and wishing him the best in his future endeavors. And we will back that up to say as well, thank you, Coach Graupe, for the time spent here at the college. Nothing but the best going out to you. Very, very fortunate that I was able to actually speak to Mark Graupe during the MSU basketball series for the broadcasting department. I was fortunate enough to talk to Coach Graupe at halftime and post-game for some quick interviews for our production. And one of the very moments I will not forget, as that was kind of the beginning to my sports broadcasting world. Well, sort of in that process, but nothing but the best going out to you, Coach. And thank you for all that you've done for the women's basketball program. And with that said, that also leads to the next portion of the segment here. They mentioned that they will also begin the search nationwide for the next leader or the next coach of the women's basketball team. But in the time being, assistant coach Ryan Clark will take over as the interim head coach. And that began this past weekend versus the Minnesota State University Moorhead Dragons. And in Clark's first game as interim coach, lost to the Dragons 86-76. So kept them in, but a 10-point loss. It was within range, but Moorhead closing out the Beavers. But then Coach Clark getting his first win. The team getting Coach Clark his first win as interim head coach. 65-61, a nice rebound game and some nice sharing of the wealth amongst scoring for some players like Amber Stavon hitting 19 points, 8 rebounds, Anna Counts getting on that triple-double watch, but only had 3 assists, but also counting 9 points and 8 rebounds. Broadcasting major Callie Delsman at 10 points and 5 rebounds. Great all-around team performance for the Lady Beavers. And we wish a congrats to Ryan Clark on his first win as head coach of the team. And now before we're going to talk about some of the Region 3 wrestling results involving the Bishop Bryan Lions. But before we get into that, I want to tell you guys about our other sponsor of the show. That is Peyton Barch Photography, a student at Minot High and athlete as well. He is a swimmer, but he also does great work with the camera lens, being able to capture some great moments, some times where the shots of the athletes getting emotional after scoring a goal or even hitting a 3-point bucket, whatever it may be. Peyton is good for that as well. He attends a lot of the Minot High events, just like Joshua Strong going to Minot State here. He goes to all of the Minot State games. Well, for Peyton, him being a Minot High student, he attends all of the Minot High games, and he'll do some Class B games once in a while if his nights are open. But, like I said last episode, you're just catching him in his stride currently. If you go follow him right now, he is on Twitter at Barch Photos and Instagram at Peyton Barch Photography. He's releasing some nice folders and is building up his portfolio even before he's getting to college or whatever he plans to do. He is just getting started, folks, and you'll want to go check out his work. So once again, go check out Peyton Barch. We thank him for the sponsorship of the Minot Sports Podcast. On to Region 3 Wrestling, where the Bishop Bryan Lions participated in the Region 3 Wrestling Tournament that actually went down in Stanley, so just a little bit west of Minot. And it was a start for Bishop Bryan. It was one of their better starts. Obviously, them being one of the top clubs in the Region 3 wrestling division. However, there are teams that are just slightly better, and that was the case for some of the scores and results of the tournament. Starting off, Bishop Bryan opened up with a Criteria Fall win over Williams County, believed to be 43-42, or 42+1 over 42, if I'm not mistaken. Then they beat Stanley, home team Stanley, 54-18, so they're still alive and well. And this is where it got tougher, and it was just bound to be that they would run into a good wrestling squad, and that happened to be the Velva Aggies, who are so good year in, year out with their wrestling program, their practices, all the talent that they have, and how the coaches, they got a great group down there in Aggie Land. And Bishop Ryan, they made it competitive at times, try to get off to a quick start at the beginning, but Velva's just too good, and so they won that match 46-24. So a last chance opportunity for Bishop Ryan to clinch a spot in the state tournament, and it is against Northern Lights, who they actually beat earlier this year. That was actually on, home mats, or let's say home territory for Bishop Ryan. I don't know what I'm saying, but it was a home match for Bishop Ryan, one of the quadrangulars. They beat Northern Lights earlier in the season, but this does not go the way of the Lions as of what they'd hoped for, as Northern Lights will move on to the state tournament along with Velva, defeating the Lions 45-36. Tough end to the season. Bishop Ryan was a hard out, a really hard out. Like, you could have predicted any two to make the state tournament, and there wouldn't have been any argument. And tough break for Bishop Ryan, and this season comes to an end like that, and they will not be advancing to the state tournament. However, Coach Nagel should be proud of the effort that they put in, despite that they were missing a bunch of guys for certain weight classes. At least that's what I heard from Coach Roger Coleman, and it was evident in most cases that they were missing some guys in certain weight classes, and that just was deemed crucial for them. But with that said, that concludes the season for Bishop Ryan Wrestling. Still very good squad. They're going to be losing a few key guys, but they still have most of their team intact and still very young. So we'll have more on that in the future, but I think definitely they're still going to be competing inside that Region 3 division. But a tough end to the season for Bishop Ryan Wrestling, and that concludes their season. They are the first Minot sports team to check in for winter sports and finish up their postseason race. So like I said, that is it for Lions Wrestling. Now moving on to Minot State football. We've actually kind of kept this on the back end here. We previewed it last episode, and now National Signing Day has come and gone. And so let's take a look at the results. 17 players that the Minot State football team recruited as a result of National Signing Day 21. And it was very telling by the video released by head coach Mike Aldrich about how this year kind of gave him an opportunity to maybe not so much add skill players at all positions, but mainly focus in on some of positions of need. And one of them that he mentions specifically was the running back room. They even added offensive line, tight ends, H-backs, and some other defensive additions. But all that being said by Coach, very telling of what their intentions were. And with this COVID year, it kind of benefits them, gives them flexibility, being able to address some of those needs, like he said. And with all of that being made, progression for the Minot State football team, let's take a look at who they added to the team. Let's look at some of the new faces and some of the new names. Starting off, Levi Beckham, a tight end from Kingman, Arizona. A cornerback from North Lakewood, Washington. His name is Carson Chrisman. One of those running backs we were talking about, Ian Dexter from Arvada, Colorado. So Ian is just yet another one of the Colorado recruits. They've been building a lot of relationships with most teams in the state of Colorado. Brady Dutcher, offensive guard from Casper, Wyoming, is also home to the Casper Horseheads. So pretty cool. Maybe we see him come to a SaberDogs game where they are playing the Horseheads, or he goes back down home to watch Casper play the SaberDogs. So pretty cool to see that. There could be a connection there, but Casper, Wyoming, keep that in mind. There's multiple Minot sports connections there, but kind of off topic there. Just thought I'd bring it up, though. Might be pretty cool down the line in the future. But Brady Dutcher, offensive guard from Casper. Clayton Hawkins, he's an offensive tackle from the Sin City, Las Vegas, Nevada. Ben Janowski from Menomonee Falls, Wisconsin. I probably butchered that. Let me try it again. Menomonee Falls, Wisconsin. He's an offensive guard. I think I got it. But Ben Janowski coming to Minot State to protect whoever is at quarterback. A local recruit from Grand Forks Central. You've heard of the Grand Forks Central Knights probably a few times on this podcast. But Ty Lorenz, quarterback. So the Beavers adding a quarterback to the room with Ben Belinsky now in his senior season. It is evident that they are starting to look for some new guys to replace Ben when his time comes to graduate and leave the program or do whatever he plans to do for his future career. Here's another running back, like we mentioned earlier, Evan Lovett from Tucson, Arizona. Zeth Nastel, linebacker from Mesa, Arizona. So lots of Arizona kids coming in. Another Vegas prospect, we have Roman Pickens, who is a linebacker, and a tight end also from Nevada, but this time in Overton, Justin Profit. Another linebacker from Sumner, Washington, Cole Roth. Nice name, by the way, if you know what I mean. Noah Schroeder, tight end, another local recruit, this time from Powers Lake High School in Powers Lake, North Dakota. So good to see some local recruits coming back to Minot once again. And there should be another one coming up here pretty soon, but just going down the list here. Cameron Toms, a wide receiver from Kingman, Arizona, another Arizona high school prospect. Joe Varos, offensive line from Norwalk, California. Jared Williams, another running back. This one is from Scottsdale, Arizona. And here's the last recruit on the list, another local recruit. You've actually may have seen or heard this name before, and if you have been paying attention to my highlights of Minot High football, they played the Williston Coyotes at home once this past season. You may have heard of J.J. Williams. He was the starting running back for the Williston Coyotes from Williston High School. And so he is going to bring his talents to the Magic City in order to help build the dam. So there you have it for all of the recruits being added to the Minot State football program. Great day, I would guess, for all of the coaches and staff and the new players coming in. Very fortunate to be granted the opportunity to play college athletics, whereas most others may have been looking for anything to hold on to or to try and get somewhere to a college or wherever. These guys were given secondary chances to play at a higher level, and that is what we like to see. Like to see some new faces, and we're very excited, I would say. I bet I can speak for the coaches and the team. Pretty sure that 100% happy to have them all on board. And then for our last bit of important Minot sports news to cap off this episode, Minot State Baseball releasing their schedule just about a week in advance before their season actually gets going, but for them, they released their schedule. We didn't quite see it with soccer and softball directly, but baseball was able to unveil their schedule to the world, and they begin on Tuesday, February 16th, when they take on Northeastern State on the road. And let's take a look at it, shall we? So the full schedule for the Minot State Beavers baseball team, NSIC champions in 2018. So they'll be getting back into the mix after having a shortened season last year, unfortunately due to COVID. I am sure they are itching to get back onto the field and play once again. But they open up the season at Northeastern State on the 16th. February 17th, they're at Rogers State, at Pittsburgh State on the 19th, 20th versus Northwest Missouri State. That is also on the 21st as well. And then, oddly, a month off for the team, which kind of interesting to say the least, but there's probably a good reason behind it, one that I cannot think of at the moment. Maybe to have some fill-in days in case games do get moved or canceled. They can use that time to reschedule. I don't know exactly what the reasoning behind it is, but they won't play again after 5 games in February. They won't play again until March 20th, where they will begin a 3-game series against the University of Sioux Falls. This is where they begin playing divisional games inside the NSIC conference. So in-conference games will begin for them in late March. So 20th and 21st versus University of Sioux Falls in March. 24th at Upper Iowa University. Again, this will be all in March unless I state otherwise. 2 games the 27th at Augustana University, and 1 against the same Augustana Vikings on the 28th, and on the road also at Wayne State College on March 30th. So 2 games there. So they'll be all on the road for the entire month of March, and then a long stretch of home games, and then a mix of road stretches and home stretches after that. April 7th versus Concordia University St. Paul. 2 games April 7th. 2 games April 10th versus Minnesota State University Mankato. 11th versus Minnesota State University Mankato again at Corbett Field. Wednesday, the 14th of April versus Winona State University. 2 games there. 2 games at Northern State on the 17th. And April 18th, once again at Northern State. University of Mary will come up to Minot to play at Corbett Field versus the Minot State Beavers on Wednesday, April 21st. 2 games there. 2 games on Saturday the 24th versus Southwest Minnesota State. And that's Sunday the 25th, also in April, versus the same Mustangs. Wednesday, April 28th, 2 games against St. Cloud State University. And now we move on to May, where the Beavers will open up with a 5-game road stretch at University of Minnesota Duluth. 2 games on May 1st. 1 on May 2nd versus the same Bulldogs. Then they will go to Bemidji State, where they will take on the Beavers. That'll be Wednesday, May 5th, 2 games there. 2 games on May 7th, that is a Friday, at home versus University of Minnesota Crookston Golden Eagles. And on that Saturday, the 8th, they will play another game against each other. And then after that is the NSIC tournament, which begins Wednesday, May 12th. There you have it for the Minot State Beavers baseball schedule. Kind of an overall summary. 5 games in February, all on the road in March. I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games in March. In April, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 15, 16. There's 17 in April, if I didn't miscount. All a mix of road and home games, and not counting the NSIC tournament games. In May, the Beavers will be playing, it looks to be 8. Let me count here again. 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8. So yes, so those will be the amount of games they'll be playing. You can do the math later. I'm too lazy to do it right now because obviously I am recording this wonderful podcast episode, which we are now done recording this episode, which is the 22nd installment of Season 2. As always, I want to thank you guys for checking in on trying to get your Minot Sports feed and fix and all of the important information and facts that you need. And I'm happy to be the one that gives you all that important facts and information. And so that is it for this episode 22 in the 2nd season of the Minot Sports Podcast, part of the KMSU TV and Radio series. And we also thank Joshua Strong and Peyton Barch Photography. We thank all of our sponsors for their partnership with the podcast. Once again, this has been your host, Cole Clementich. You can follow the Minot Sports Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Go check out KMSU TV and Radio also on social media at KMSU19 on Twitter and Facebook, KMSU TV Radio on Instagram, and YouTube is at KMSU TV. Also, be sure to check out Joshua Strong and Peyton Barch Photography on social media at _Joshua W. Strong on Twitter and Instagram, at Barch Photos on Twitter, and at Peyton Barch Photography on Instagram. We thank them always for being great partners with us in not just the podcast, but also the Minot sports world, doing everything we can to promote Minot sports and Minot sports athletes the absolute very best we can. And so once again, we thank them for the partnership. One quick note I need to make before I end off the episode with the Class B District 12 Girls Basketball Tournament coming up at the Minot Auditorium. Unfortunately, I will have to miss most of it due to other commitments that I'll need to make for this weekend. I do apologize in advance. Hopefully, those future tournaments will look better on the schedule, but like I said, apologize in advance. Hoping to catch some other tournaments. And don't worry, Minot sports fans, I will be able to provide, obviously, some game day graphics, final score graphics, all that to keep you guys informed. So hopefully that will go well. That's going to do it, Minot sports fans. Thank you once again for tuning in. This has been episode 22. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Be sure to stay safe and stay healthy out there. Also, stay warm. Weather has been getting very cold as of late, so be sure to bundle up. And of course, take care out there, and I will talk to you guys in the next one. Stay safe, everybody.